Welcome to episode 16 of the Ad Quick Madvertising podcast, where we sit down with the best and brightest marketers, technologists, and startup operators to discuss everything new and exciting at the intersection of marketing, advertising, and technology. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Chris Gadek. I'm a VP of Growth at AdQuick, and I'm joined by my friend and colleague, Adam Singer. Today, we're chatting with Lucas DiPietrantonio, CEO and founder of Darkroom Agency. We'll be chatting about direct-to-consumer branding, acquisition strategies, and the evolution of D2C to moving towards omnichannel marketing. Lucas and his team at Darkroom work with high-growth e-commerce companies. You know a bunch of them, Olipop, VYBES, Joybird, and they work on digital strategy, attribution, analytics, and revenue growth. So we're happy to have you. Welcome to the podcast, Lucas.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much, Chris. Appreciate the introduction. You nailed the last name, which is tough to do.
I grew up on the west side of Chicago and in an all Italian neighborhood, and we're wannabe Italians. So pretty much.
All right, so you had training early on. I see.
Yep. It was Adam took a look at it and he was like, I don't know if I could do this one.
This intro is not for me. We'll get you there, Adam, but hopefully by the end of the pod.
Where are you joining us from, Lucas?
I'm in New York right now, so solid amount of Italians here too. But I'm on the Lower West Side.
And I imagine that the smoke is cleared from a couple weeks ago, where we saw some of those great campaigns in the wild on billboards with all the smoke and fire, and the Diablo campaign was looking pretty cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I missed that. I was in Mexico on a trip, and I felt like I just missed the craziness in New York, but I got different sort of craziness in Mexico, just with like there was a volcano erupting or some worries that it might reach Mexico City. So the people I was there with, we were like, we escaped one disaster.
Still on brand. Still on brand for the Diablo launch, though.
Exactly. It fit well.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have thought of it. I mean, it was pretty much perfect. If you're Activision Blizzard, you couldn't have asked for that to go any better. Anyway, but let's dive in. So tell us about your business and how did you get into it? Just briefly, if you'd be so kind for our audience.
Yeah, so I run an agency in New York called Darkroom. We're a global agency. We have about 70 people worldwide. We work with B2C businesses on commercializing marketing programs for them. So what that means is pretty much growing revenue for their business across a variety of different channels. So direct to consumer, which is traditionally most e-commerce channels, retail, and Amazon, other sort of retail networks that might be a part of that. And we have a lot of what we do is basically strategy consulting, and then we have a series of execution and service lines that really focus on like attribution and measurement, which is becoming really important for direct to consumer and omnichannel businesses in general. We work on performance marketing at large and performance creative, among other things. So we've been in business for about six years now. We're working with mostly venture-backed or private equity-backed businesses, and yeah, it's been very exciting. And then the last thing I'll add is this quarter we're launching, starting in Q3, we're launching a education platform called Darkroom University, which is basically like a packaged set of resources that we use to teach our internal hires that we're going to be opening up for the general public. And there's some interesting AI tools that we're using to help educate the general public on like simple marketing questions, how they should be structuring ad campaigns, how they should be leveraging different tools. So that's launching. And then last but not least, we have a little fund where we invest in commerce and commerce technology businesses. So that's something that's kind of evolved just through the work that we do.
Right on. You invested in Triple Whale, right? So you know those folks?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah,
by the way,
early.
Oh, I need to do a quick plug. Zach Murray, who's a product guy over at Triple Whale, has a side thing called Foreplay Advertising, and he just sent me this incredible shirt with like this vintage ad on the background or on the back. Incredible. But anyway, I digress.
Zach's great. Jackson knows Zach. I'm closer with Max and just the founding team, but yeah, love Triple Whale. Great product. Really, really excited about their business.
Cool. Well, let's jump in. So when you work with these clients, is there a common like evolution for the tactics and strategies that you see like the companies that you work with employ? So for example, like do they typically get started on Instagram and they branch out to TikTok and then they exhaust that channel and then move on? What does that progression look like? Because we're B2B folks and we're here to learn from folks like you.
So I think one of the interesting things, like when you look at direct to consumer marketing programs in 2023, they're pretty diverse. And that's because channel innovation is just continuing to accelerate. What do I mean by that? I was just talking to Arjun Singh, co-founder of Jolie, really fast growing business. They're like at $27 million in MRR in 18 months or something. Their channel mix is super diverse, and they didn't start with any sort of paid advertising. They have a lot of out of home. So if you're in New York City, they've got billboard, they have other out of home stickers in relevant environments. So they'll have like your shower water is as dirty as this martini. It's a shower water purifier outside popular bars and pubs in New York City. And then they have like, a truck billboard that's just kind of riding around in 4 trucks for the month in New York City. But then they also have your traditional channel mix of like Facebook and Google and your more bottom of funnel channels. So I think it really depends on the business. It really depends on the founders and who's leading marketing initiatives. There's a lot of conjecture now, and I think the customer journey has always been really multi-touch. So it's just a question of like how you kind of want to index on some of these channels, and what you're how saturated these channels are when you think about your competition. Advertising is really a game of like of attention and serving the best ads at the right time. So I would say it's really diverse now than what it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago when we started the business, and I think that's just going to continue to accelerate as we look at different companies. I think it's pretty mixed.
With all those touch points, I imagine that the software stack has evolved quite a bit too, right? To kind of commensurate with the evolution of all these retail networks and all these different ad platforms. So like, how do your clients think about, corralling all this stuff together? All the data, all the campaign execution, like what does a stack look like for a D2C company in 2023?
Yeah, I think first of all, there's an abundance of different software solutions that you can use for a variety of different purposes. We obviously have our preferences. That's a lot of what our clients come to us for, because I think, let's just take attribution,
right,
and measurement. Like, I think a lot of companies are thinking about attribution and measurement in the wrong sorts of ways, because they don't understand how the privacy landscape has changed. And so that education gap prevents them for actually measuring their initiatives in the right way to actually allocate budget and make more informed decisions or run just more thoughtful experiments. So that's a lot of what we do, just from a consultative perspective. It's like bringing a client on board, educating them on how they should think about incrementality and measurement, and then equipping them with a software stack to match that. We use all custom out of the box, data warehouses and visualizations that really help them out. I think that's really crucial. You have too many clients, like big businesses, that are led by marketers who are still looking at last click attribution, and it's really just preventing them from recognizing any sort of incrementality with their ad spend.
Wow, last click attribution in 2023, it's still here.
right? It's like, it's insane. No, but I mean, seriously, like from pretty significant private equity backed businesses, and they're guiding and making decisions based on last click attribution or what they're seeing in platform, when we just know that it's such a fragmented view of the performance equation.
Yeah.
So like I'm really hell-bent on training our teams. I'm like, we need centralized measurement solutions for understanding the entire media mix, and for being able to contextualize a given channel and its performance, within the entire advertising program. This is just going to progress because I think it's been very clear, and the legislation in the United States hasn't been so clear. But I mean, we're moving to an era where tracking is going to be very very difficult, if not impossible. The way that I'm telling my marketing teams to think and prepare about the future is prepare for a future where tracking is almost impossible, and you might get certain signals in platform or in other areas, but like we need to be starting from an experimentation perspective.
On the other hand, that might be healthy in terms of if we in fact still have a lot of marketers looking at last click attribution. The problem there is, a shop like yours will go out and do a bunch of work and generate awareness for a company. A user, having heard about a certain brand, will go to their computer, they'll Google the brand, they'll come to the site, make a purchase, and because of last click, now they're going to say, well, search works for me, and not discount everything that happened up until that search. So that's definitely an opportunity for, I think, marketers to. Attribution is never going to be perfect anyway. So it's like one of those things that I think, like the more directional you can be with some of these larger channels, things are getting better or getting worse, and you can use it as an indicator of success. And you can have a reasonable understanding of what's working for you, right?
Branded search is a great example here. So branded search is traditionally your highest performing, bottom of funnel campaign. That really should be attributed to more top of funnel awareness campaigns that are driving people to actually search for whatever your product or service is or does. So we need to actually segment and parse out the return on ad spend that you're getting from branded search to other channels and figure out how is my branded search return attributed to out of home or to OTT or to Meta. And that's what we're doing. And that's an education process. I had a client, literally a new CMO, come on board for a private equity backed brand in our portfolio the other day. And she wants to make changes to the media mix, wants to drive efficiencies. Very typical of CMO to do this when they come on board. She was like, in our other market, I won't name the market, we really went deeper on branded campaigns, branded search, and I'm like, well, that's not incremental at all. But this was the last click. That this is how like people are getting educated, or how they've been trained in the past 10 years, and it's like, so there's a bit of an explanation and a process that needs to be said there to say like that's not incremental. That's not incremental spend for your business.
I've seen CMOs dial up brand search and claim success of a new search campaign. I'm like, you are just capturing the demand that was created by the team before you took this role. Like you weren't actually building any sort of demand. And so I think that can happen nefariously, or that can happen simply just from not really understanding search, right?
I think it's really just a question of education. People have been we've developed bad habits as marketers over the last decade because deterministic attribution was a thing. It was a thing, and we have ATT and ITT and a lot of these privacy changes that are creating a new landscape and a new way that we need to think about marketing and performance marketing. And I think those are forcing functions for us to become better marketers. But there's some education that's required. Why is the landscape changing? How can we think about these things? And from my perspective, the CMO really needs to start to become more of like a marketing economist. Like they need to have a foundation in performance marketing and privacy, and they need to understand when to run experiments, how to see trend. And that's kind of where we're pushing our portfolio.
Yeah, it's interesting because historically the CMO role is really the one role in the C-suite that's kind of there's no nice way to say this, kind of the clown in the court, right? They're the ones that
Jester.
half their, classically said half, my marketing spend or ad spend is wasted, and I don't know which half, right? And so I agree with you, Lucas. I've been beating this drum for years that even executives need to be data savvy. And I haven't seen it yet at many firms. Certainly there are industries, the tech industry, the casino industry, travel as well is pretty data driven. Like the Expedia team is like, they know their numbers through the whole thing. But for big consumer brands, I think I've seen, at least personally, pockets of people on the marketing teams who are just like whip sharp with numbers. And not in every case, but in a lot of cases, as you move up the food chain, it becomes more hippo, more highest paid person's opinion, and less able to, build an attribution model or run an A/B test or, do all the things that you guys do every day.
Yeah, I think that's going to change. Like it really is over the next 2-3 years. The CMOs who are brand marketers by trade, and they focus on campaign development. This is why you have CMO tenure the lowest it's
It's like
ever
2
been.
years. Yeah, it's awful.
18 months.
It's getting lower than that, right? And most of the conversations I'm having with now, just anecdotally, like it's CMOs and CFOs, and we like interacting with CFOs because we're tying our ad spend always back to the bottom line of the companies that we're working with. If we're not improving incremental revenue and incremental EBITDA, then we're not doing our job as marketers. At the end of the day, marketing is a tool, and it's meant to be a champion of growth for the business, right? It's the way that we grow, and it's the way that we make more money. So I see the CMOs. They're again, this time, this bear market we're in, cash is tight. We have a tight money situation. It's a forcing function to get CFOs into the marketing equation and to get CMOs to start thinking more like economists and their financial counterparts. That to me is good. It's good for marketing. What I'm doing, just to tell you guys at the agency, is like I'm trying to build the next generation of B2C CMOs. Like I'm trying to equip them with the toolkit and the skill set to be able to do that. And that is an understanding of how to run experimentation at scale and commercialize marketing programs. And that means commercializing a team, workflow, project management, etc. That's obviously the strategic brand marketing side of running campaigns. And then it's the data analysis and measurement side of things, which I think is so crucial to being able to run a P&L, to being able to run a media mix model, to being able to run a revenue forecast. All these tools are available to marketers today. It's just figuring out how they piece together. So that's what we're doing at the agency. Most of my employees who work on the strategy side, like I know that they want to launch their own companies at a certain point, and that's what they're coming to Darkroom to do, to understand how to best do that in the most efficient ways and how to run a marketing program. I'm very, very fired up about that mission, and I'm excited about the work that we're doing here.
That's awesome, Lucas. I think that's so cool. So to shift away from data, I'd like to talk about creativity for a little bit. And the reason is we had a previous guest on who runs an ad creative shop. And he spoke at great lengths of the fact that he was bemoaning the fact that within advertising teams in corporate America, they weren't able to produce anything of note. The work from ad creative teams in particular has become, in his words, this watered down, designed by committee work. People are afraid to take risks. It's politics, but it's even more than that. It's even deeper than that. It's sort of a just risk-averse culture of safetyism within companies where they're too afraid of maybe annoying someone or maybe doing something that wasn't like not within the mold of what other brands were doing. I'm curious, have you come across this in your consulting and your experiences? Are these brands basically just trading on their existing equity? Is this a made up thing in people's minds? Because if you're a consumer right now, I think it's like reasonable. You could have watched the Super Bowl and been like, wow, all of those ads were like pretty bad, right?
Yeah, I mean, all right. So like if you look at most of B2C product verticals, like the major ones, home goods, hair care, beauty and wellness, food and
Apparel.
beverage, CPG, apparel, like the incident and rates of new business entering those spaces is increasing. So what you're getting is like a tremendous amount of competition. And this is driven by two factors. The first factor is just the Shopify bootstrapped business ecosystem. So it's easier now than ever through globalization and through a variety of these technology tools to launch a consumer business. That's force number one of new entrants and barriers to entry being really low. The second force is influencer-driven brands. So a lot of just consumerism and capitalism has been driven by the attention game. And a lot of who's commanding the attention game today is micro influencers, people who are developing these really strong niches with their own sets of loyalty. And so those influencers are launching their own products. Think of businesses like, Mr. Beast and Feastables, Emma Chamberlain Coffee, a couple businesses in our portfolio with larger celebrities too. And so there's a tremendous amount of new entrants on the influencer side. And I'm not just talking about those really large ones, I'm talking about even smaller ones. So what this is creating is intense competition for incumbents who've traditionally, they've earned pretty high margins because they have these defensible brand moats and good products, and they kind of live off of that. And so I've had a number of conversations with a lot of these enterprise businesses over the past 6 months, and they're really trying to figure out like what's next for our business in this bear market, in this hyper competitive market. How do we outcompete the peer set? And it's unfortunate because what you're seeing is a lot of reaction. And so a lot of what the marketing function is doing now is looking at what the immediate peer set and competitive set is doing and replicating that. Oh, they're doing UGC with these influencers. Let's do that. They're doing negative hook ad creative. Let's do that. And so I think the general sentiment on the brand side is like, it's more of like replicative than original, which is exactly what you're saying. And I think the brands that are taking risks and being very original are being rewarded. So these are brands like Liquid Death is a good example. Jolie is a great example. And they were just at one of our events last week. And then in-house is another example. We just had John O'Shaffler give a talk on this at one of our events. Like, lean into friction, like channels with a high degree of friction. Sometimes that's where the biggest payoff is. So you think of different companies who are like buying Facebook communities. Brunt Workwear, another one of our clients, they started sponsoring NASCAR. They launched a podcast. It was a top 1% podcast. So these are companies that are being a little bit more experimentational, and they're getting rewarded for it.
Yeah, I love that you say that brands are being rewarded for creativity again, because frankly, I think consumers are tired of a lot of these tribal-esque warfares, not just because of what brands are doing, but just like the broader narrative in America right now. It's like I don't want to know, like, when I buy a car, like what my car brand thinks about a specific voting issue. Like I have so many more things I care about in my life, and it's like not anywhere on my list. I want to know that the dealership is clean. I want to know that I'm going to get good service, right? And I feel like a lot of marketers have gotten away from what it is their job even is, because they have these little political missions, or they read a post about whatever, and now are trying to make their brand dollars go behind something they believe in personally versus like what's actually their job or what actually they should be doing for the business. So Lucas is giving us optimism today. We had a previous podcast guest, Isaac Simpson, I mentioned. Go watch the episode because basically, he's bemoaning the fact that he's sat in one too many, conference rooms where it was, the CMO's pet project of some cause that had nothing to do with the company. And, he basically said, this is a bad idea. They went ahead and did it. And then the brand suffered in the market. So I think.
Yeah, those are the type of, those are the type of initiatives and people that aren't going to be rewarded. And unfortunately, they're going to get filtered out because of that, just because of the market and where we're at.
There's a lot of people who've sort of been like pilot fish-esque of the marketing ad and even the tech sector. You see this with crypto, right? They moved on to hype crypto things and Web3 and metaverse things. And they're not serious people in the sector, but they create this sort of FOMO in corporate America. We're probably onto another topic than political causes, but they create FOMO within companies and they get people who don't necessarily spend their day following trends to spend money on their consulting or their product that they know in their hearts of hearts is a zero, or they too sort of believe naively that something is going to, people are going to want to, go to a Chipotle event in the metaverse, right? Like something stupid like that. And consumers just want a burrito and a cool BOGO offer, and maybe to know that their burrito is, going to sustainable farms or something like that, right? So I think I hope you're right, and I hope now that we're off a zero interest rate policy, we can get back to real marketing and not all of these weird sort of postmodern things.
I do like the use of satire as a differentiator or a parody. I think somebody who does this incredibly well is the creative director over at Oatly. And the one that comes to mind immediately, they always have this like kind of like this sassy marketing, but the one that stands out for me, and it's like in your neighborhood, Lucas, where it's like near Penn Station, they bought 2 massive billboards that are like vertically oriented. And the first one said, what would be weirder than buying a giant billboard to promote a free newsletter about an oat milk? And right, because who would reasonably read that? And then the other billboard says buying 2. So, that like they go against the grain on pretty much everything from, creative best practices on like billboards and, kind of poking fun at themselves. And so I found that the younger companies can get away with more and can make a splash or impact because there's probably not a whole lot of people telling them no.
Yeah, I think I like that too. Just harkening back to out-of-home experiences, when you're tying it back to digital, whether there's like something actionable that you're seeing and it's like you're trying to attribute back to it, like an email sign up or some sort of giveaway or contest, like on the billboard. I love those experiences, and that's a lot of what we're trying to do at the agency, working with our clients, is saying, great, how can we force some measurement or trackability on some of these out-of-home channels. So that's been fun too.
Yeah. Now, if you have a Shopify store, you could literally just go and click generate a pixel. And as soon as your billboard goes up in the real world, you could start basically saying traffic flow into your various components. Sorry, I had to plug it because it was contextually relevant.
And we just launched it this week. So
yeah, so it's fresh and top of mind. Adam,
that's incredible. I gotta check it out.
Yeah, well, happy to do so. Adam, you want to take the next one?
Sure. I have a lot of questions for Lucas. He's super smart, so we can take it any direction he'd like. You mentioned Mr. Beast, and I'm a Mr. Beast fan. I've been watching his videos for a long time before he was popular. Because I love YouTube. I have a YouTube channel no one watches, but I'm more of a consumer there. Anyway, what do you think in terms of there's celeb driven brands, and then there's just founder driven brands where the founder is super outspoken online and connects with people, and like everyone loves that person, and it's like, oh, I could give my money to big CPG, or I could give my money to like the most passionate person about like, you know, like floor cleaner, right? Like it's almost a no-brainer. Do you think that trend like has a saturation point, or is there basically a blue ocean market for if you're an entrepreneur with the cool idea for something that you should go and take a bite out of big CPG? Because it seems like every time I watch Shark Tank, there's another product that's like it's just a commoditized good, but they're so much more passionate about it than I would ever see someone on like the Procter and Gamble team. So like I'm like, why would I not give that guy my money? Is there like a saturation point in the market where there's not weird people like us that care this much about marketing? I'm curious how you see that playing out. Is there going to be more or less? You know, where could that go?
I mean, I think that's just part of like being a good founder. Like that's the X factor that opens up doors for you that you wouldn't have otherwise if you were like a subpar founder. I don't know really how to say it. It's like that charisma. People invest in good founding teams on the CPG side. If you're out there marketing your product, being the face of it, I mean, that's how you open up new distribution. That's how you get more investors. I can think of so many different brands like this, and it's very hard to quantify like what is the incremental lift that's having. You know, me as a marketer, I always want to measure what is that having on sales. It's very hard to say. I'll give a couple examples. Bandit Running is a running startup. They do apparel in New York City. I've gotten the. Go ahead.
I've been seeing them everywhere, blowing up on my feeds.
Yeah. So Tim West is the founder. Great guy. I've had the chance. I was on a panel with him. He showed me Bandit 2 weeks ago. He's speaking at one of our events next month. You know, he's built a serious community. Like it's surprising how engaged that community is. I'm talking like 10, 20% engagement rates on their Instagram. They have like 20,000 followers too. It's not a lot, but this brand is just like growing like crazy. And it's part and parcel because like this guy's out there every day, like living the brand, owning it, talking to customers, being like a founder. And that's where they're growing in like a competitive space. Like the traditional players in there are big. So that's one example. There's another startup I advise called Tagesta. That's an eyewear brand. Same thing. Their founder is like, he is the brand. And people buy into him and they love the product too. You obviously need to have a good product. I think that's like an X factor that, if you have it as a founder, like, you know, it's adding a lot of depth to your team and to, you know, your growth rate. I think it's like it's a catalyst.
Yeah. Another, just to talk about that at scale, the Airbnb founder, like still, what's his name? I can't think off the top of my head. Brian, he still hosts and he still like goes into and stays in houses. It's like you could be at $1 billion brand and founder or early team member and still connect with users. And I think it's like, that's like a super underrated thing. I think there's a lot of bias to once companies get popular, like you almost never hear from the founders again. And I think that kind of sucks, right? It's like that passion and staying connected to everyday, you know, end users. I think it shows you care, right? And it shows you care at a point where you don't have to. I think we like it with young companies because the founders have to be there, but I think it says something when you're a mature company and you're still showing up on the front lines.
Yeah, it does a lot for the culture of the organization. It just does, like doing that performative task day in, day out. And it's what gets your early adopters to really buy into the mission. And if you look, like, let's just take consumer. If you look at like your VIP or your top customers, those are like your early adopters, your first cohort of customers who end up being your highest CLV customers. And they're a large, dependable source of profit for your business. So like you can tie those actions back to, you know, how profitable your customer base is going to be, you know, long term.
We should coin a term for that. It should be like the Maximus strategy, like from from Gladiator, right? He's leading from the front all of these battles, and yeah, Chris is doing the thumbs
I
up.
love Gladiator. I love it.
It's a great movie. There's a series on Netflix right now that goes through the history of the end of Rome. I highly recommend it. And episode 1 is basically Gladiator. If you didn't, that movie was like loosely based on historic record.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius, I think, right?
Yeah. So, but like the movie itself, like it's not all historically accurate. They added a lot, but if you watch the historical documentary, there's like a lot of the scenes they reenacted are basically what happened in some of the gladiator scenes, which is cool.
Yeah, Marcus Aurelius, obviously incredible, emperor. I don't know if you guys have read Meditations. Smart dude, stoic. Yeah, right there. And then Commodus, also real guy, bad guy. Apparently, Marcus Aurelius wasn't the best father. We all are, we all have our weaknesses.
So in terms of being out there, being a social founder, I think there's huge upside for that. Do you think now at this point in the market, it makes sense to go the other way and for something sort of be behind the scenes and maybe more of a Machiavellian character where you're sort of shrouded in mystery? And the only reason I ask this question to you as a marketer is it's because so many people are very public. Like, what do you think there's an opportunity to be a little bit mysterious for some founders? And I guess maybe it depends on the brand type.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I think in consumer, that's virtually impossible. Like, why the fuck should anyone care about you, But like great marketing example is Bitcoin. It's a network, mysterious founder shrouded in mystery.
Chris is Satoshi though. So
yeah. So I think that has a lot to do with how people buy into the network and the philosophy. So that's just one that's coming off, on the top of my mind.
It's a great example. And then the user community sort of fills in the lore, and that one's probably one of the better ones. Cool. We have other brand questions. I'm curious because we have a lot of other agencies that listen, a lot of out-of-home agencies, creative agencies, web agencies, probably like the whole spectrum of tech and marketing. I'm curious from your perspective, in terms of in like a rough economic climate, is there anything you're doing differently to, I guess, retain clients and go to market or instill confidence in your clients that your consulting is great, other than the obvious things like measurement and showing ROI? Anything, if you're like an agency or starting an agency, that you can do to handhold best during tough times?
Yeah, I think in the marketing space, like my general advice for agency owners is like, do not shy away from the financials. It's very easy to do that. I don't mean like obviously from your agency financials. I mean like the financial impact that you're having on the businesses that you're working with. Understand their P&L as if it was your own, because that really is that is how people are making decisions. They're making decisions today based on the ROI of a service, of their investment. And so in order to really just get on the same page as a client and see eye to eye, especially with SMBs, like you need to really, really understand the financials and be comfortable working within them. So that's something that we've done. And, it goes hand in hand with all the other things that we talked about today: brand marketing, CMO tenure, speaking to CFOs, measurement and tracking, last click attribution, all the above.
I love it. So what you're saying is basically your agency needs to be an extension of the team, not just this outsourced arm that you hear from once in a while. They need to, because if you're treating the P&L as your P&L, you're basically part of the team, right?
Yeah, if you're trying to be an effective growth marketing agency, what we do is we're responsible for the growth of our clients. So, there's other specialty agencies that just focus on one channel, and it's fine to just look at single channel ROI in that case. But for us, like, we need to understand the financials of our partners. And my message is like, don't just be a marketer that doesn't understand the finances. Understand the finances and develop marketing strategies around that. You're going to be a lot better for it.
Cool. Chris, I have one more question, then you can ask a few. This one is a yes or no question, but you can expand upon it if you want. Is linear TV dead?
I don't necessarily think so. It's a saturation question. There was this customer I was talking to a couple years ago that they grew entirely based off of linear TV, and it was like a medical hand cream.
Of course. So medical hand. So basically, maybe the baby boomer cohort.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a great cohort to be in.
They do have money.
It's the richest cohort.
Yeah, it's also America's an aging population too. It's a very interesting dynamic that we look at in our consulting engagements, because every single CPG brand, they want to skew younger. They're like, we need to be younger, we need to be fresher. That's a natural thing to say from a marketing perspective, because fresh usually means innovative, usually means awareness driving, which equates to revenue, right? But like Gen Z is a smaller market than millennials, which are a smaller market than Gen X and baby boomers and so on and so forth. And so it's not necessarily it's not bad to be a company that's just going to go deep on that older generation. It's a large market with a lot of disposable income, as you guys mentioned. So I think in the United States, it's a bit precarious because we don't know what's going to happen. There's a large transfer of wealth from baby boomers to millennials and Gen Z, but that's a smaller market in aggregate. So
yeah, it does
interesting implications.
It does explain all the pharma and My Pillow ads on linear.
Said differently, for the right product, with a specific market, I think there's some really interesting things you can do with channel diversification.
Yeah, I mean, as a millennial, I haven't paid for cable TV in 20 years at this point. Like, I'm super early adopter. After I moved out of my parents' house for college, I never paid for cable. So
yeah, I don't even have cable TV in my apartment in New York.
But it's funny,
Yeah,
I go to visit, family, and they're like watching whatever they watch, cable TV news, and there's like, the commercials are fairly predictable at this point, if not a little weird, right? They're like kind of strange. Like some of them almost have a Tim and Eric kind of like unintentional, like weird aesthetic that feels like from another era. Maybe that's on purpose.
Well, some of those ads like work, like those old cringy direct response ads, like call now, like those perform.
Get your gold coins.
Yeah,
they've been selling coins on TV for 50 years.
They're doing that on podcasts now. So on like right-wing podcast, never left-wing podcasts, only right-wing podcasts are always saying, "Don't trust the government, buy Bitcoin, buy gold, whatever." You can they must be making money on some level because they're like consistently running ads. The other interesting, I feel like the new ad for millennials is like a VPN. Like half of YouTube might as well be sponsored by like Shark VPN
or ExpressVPN on.
Or any of these VPNs are at least our marketing team does know their target audience, because someone watching YouTube is in theory smart enough to set up a VPN. So I don't think it's bad targeting.
Yeah, I haven't seen a VPN ad yet, but I use it.
Cool. Can we shift gears? I want to jump into the omnichannel stuff. So one of the things I've been fascinated. So obviously we've been deep in marketing for, I don't know, me and Adam have been around the block for quite some time. But with the advent of D2C, probably like last 6-7 years, Casper broke out onto the scene 2014. Okay, so a little bit longer than that. But it started as a primarily online thing. And now, I go to my metropolitan market here in Seattle, and, I can buy, I'm probably going to butcher the name, Sanzo, and all these cool, great brands that I discovered online, now getting distribution in grocery stores, in department stores. You work with clients that do both online and retail, right, Lucas?
Yeah.
So kind of walk me through, how does that decision get made? Is that a saturation point thing where like, oh shit, fucking our channels have kind of plateaued in their efficacy, and now we need to, find the next best thing? Kind of what is the thought process behind, expanding into retail, for example?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of like, I mean, let's just take a step back. When you're launching a product, I think you need to have an understanding as a marketer. Like, there's a bit of a gut feel of like, do I have a hypothesis of whether, you know, we're going to be able to sell product in the volume that I need on this given channel. And that precedes, you know, your distribution strategy. So that's kind of the starting point. For most businesses, there is a saturation curve on each individual channel. So direct to consumer, I think it's a calculated bet of like, can you get channel market fit on a given channel? And that is an economic question of like, what's the AOV of my product? What's the CPA I can get on one of these ad channels? What does the competitive set look like? Where can I get my conversion rate? What type of product am I? And that should inform whether direct to consumer is a really viable option for a given business. So like you can just look at macro trends at large and say that, you know, most product and most merchandise is going through retail channels traditionally. I think it's like 85 to 80% of purchases happen on the retail channels. Direct consumer penetration or e-commerce penetration in the US market, it's still relatively nascent, 15 to 20%. So, you know, by and large, as a business grows over time, the macros say that in the US market, most of those purchases and sales should come from retail and wholesale. Okay. But certain businesses, the best and most cost-effective way to scale the brand is going to be through direct to consumer. We still see this now, even though a lot of these channels have become a lot more saturated. So when Casper launched in 2014, there were no other mattress brands advertising online. So awesome arbitrage opportunity, cost to acquire customers super low. They can scale that business, you know, through the roof for uncontested for a couple of years until you get Lisa and Purple and all these other competitors who start to advertise online. Today, I think you need to have really good business economics to launch a direct to consumer business. And the competitive set also needs to look really attractive. So I'll give you another example. Brunt Workwear, they were one of our clients. Eric Giroux, the founder, you know, he scaled that brand. We talked about them a little bit earlier in this podcast. You know, they found really good channel market fit on, you know, first of all, he's a great marketer on TikTok and through the podcast. And if you look at the competitive set, like they were just super authentic, had a really great message, and it aligned with that blue collar America audience. And so they had great economics and could scale that business pretty significantly on direct to consumer, to the point where, you know, Harvey Finkelstein from Shopify is coming out and tweeting about Brunt. So it's still possible to scale a direct to consumer brand today. I think you just need to be a lot more diligent and calculated about the unit economics on the ad platforms, the competitive set, and then at what point you're going to expand into other channels. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Absolutely. And so a quick little follow-up to that is like, do direct-to-consumer brands ever use digital channels to drive, I mean, in your experience, do you see a lot of D2C companies using digital channels or any platform ad channels to drive foot traffic into stores to bolster those sales in the you know, the retail locations that they have their products in?
Yeah, and this is going to be like, this is a huge problem for brands that spend significant amounts of money on digital advertising in a world where deterministic attribution is degrading, and privacy changes are implicating attribution, right? So what do I mean by that? I just told you 80% of revenue for on the macros, GMV is driven at retail, and 20 to 15% is direct to consumer. Well, the inverse is true for ad spend in the United States, meaning 70% of ad spend in the United States is digital, and 30% is other sort of traditional advertising channels. So what that means is that you have an imbalance, and most people are spending on digital, and they probably are having a really tough time of measuring the effectiveness of that spend on their traditional retail and wholesale channels. And that requires more complex, sophisticated measurement to be able to do that. That's what we're doing at the agency for our omnichannel customers. I spend this amount of revenue on Facebook. How is that contributing to my retail spend? And so we're using media mix modeling to do that, among some other different tools. That's going to become a lot more important. And I'll just play that out for you. Large enterprise customer spends a tremendous amount of money on digital advertising. Direct to consumer is a small percentage of their sales, 10 to 30%. Most sales come from Sephora, which is a channel they have no tracking on. I'm just using Sephora as an example, and in other retail channels. They want to change spend on digital, where most of their spend is, because they can't really track it or measure it. That might not be a good idea, because digital might be driving a lot of the sell-through on Sephora and on their traditional retail channels. So we need measurement to be able to understand that.
So in terms of, you've given us a lot to chew on in terms of measurement and channels. In terms of actual ad creative, what are some of your favorite, I guess, trends or examples of like, end creative, whether it's video, out of home, banner, text, any styles that you're liking right now? Some inspiration for our listeners.
Businesses that I think are doing good creatives. I have to think, just in terms of like recent campaigns that I've really appreciated, but I think for me, like creative on the advertising front, like most of what I look at on a day-to-day basis is like digital ad programs. And with the abundance of like generative AI tools that we have at our fingertips now, it's just like most of these businesses need to be just testing more and delivering more iterations. And I think people have become very attuned to like just running user generated content on like Facebook or TikTok, and they're not really thinking about like, how can I make the best ad? And that always needs to be like the first question that we're answering, no matter the medium.
I love that. Yeah, I think that any of the pure growth hacker engineering types who just think, there's some order of things you can unlock without having like that creative, nut that you first go with. It's not purely an engineering exercise, right?
Yeah, I think, I think with a lot of these businesses, and I actually just I just remembered one of the ad campaigns that I've really appreciated. Just like, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Adam, was it you with the Liquid Death can?
Yes.
Both of us.
Okay,
I have the tea, and he's got this sparkling water.
All right, so I just saw one of their recent campaigns. Honestly, the other thing that's so funny is like the amount of people in the marketing ecosystem that talk about Liquid Death on LinkedIn, right? And it's like, that's how I was like seeing their ads, and I'm like,
they're like, like Seth Godin wrote a book years ago, Purple Cow. If you're driving down the street, you see a cow, no big deal. If you see the purple cow, you might remark on it. And I think I'm like, I stopped drinking. I'm like 7 months sober or something like that. And so, when I go to a party, it's cool to walk around with a, thank you. It's cool to walk around with a Liquid Death can, and it like hits different. It feels different than a bottle of water. So they're like, I'm sure there had to have been another company that had put water in an aluminum can, maybe not, but they were the ones that marketed it well and made it seem cool. And the copy on the side is great, right? Like they thought like that was
murder your thirst.
Murder your thirst. Yeah, it's fucking killer.
The founder's a marketer, and he tells stories. And so I think going back to like these D2C companies that are going up against big CPG, I think the story is ultimately what matters. Like people crave stories. There's a dearth of great storytelling in a world owned by private equity and, big conglomerates. Like I think they tell these what I like to call like stock photo-esque stories, where it's like it might as well have been like a paint by numbers approach to a piece of ad creative or a banner ad or a social update, whatever it is. And so if you're able to do something that's a little bit more creative, I think like that's probably the bluest ocean of all as a marketing team. Can you get like, especially if you're in a sector with like that's under regulation, or that's maybe seen as stuffy and like you can't do anything interesting, if you can fight that political battle to do something creative, and like you were saying, maybe you need a bunch of iterations of it, but at least like some original piece of creative that hasn't been watered down, I think your chances are way higher of being successful at your campaign and your programs than someone who has something where it's just what GPT spat out and they don't even edit it and go with it. That's like the risk with AI, is you're getting the AI is producing an averaged out thought. It's creating a middle ground thought, which might help from inspiration perspective, but I don't think it's going to stand out.
Yeah, well, by definition, it looks at like what is the probability of this word coming next, and then it drops the word in there, and then it does that again, and basically you have a compendium of just all the stuff that it collected.
Yeah,
and it's basically like a frequency counter almost, right?
I'm very much of the opinion. So we have GPT tools that we've basically just been building on OpenAI infrastructure. Creating private knowledge graphs for each of our clients to be able to best replicate brand voice. I mean, there's so many interesting applications that we're using this technology for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm generally of the opinion that the role of a downstream brand marketer, copywriting, for instance, is just going to be fully replaced by the Gen AI. And then for a strategist who's thinking of like creative campaigns, I think, to your point, Adam, generative AI will be a huge source of inspiration for those.
Oh, totally. And anything that gets you from, the blank page problem to a few ideas is great. And then you can add your human magic to that. So that I agree that's a cool use of.
So I'll talk a little bit more on this if you guys will endure me. But
of course,
dude. So I just gave a talk last week at one of our events on really like how to clone your brand using AI. And so anyone who's used GPT in its current state, GPT-3, GPT-4, ChatGPT, like it doesn't get the branding questions. It's very tough for it to get right because it's pulling from, public domain information from 2021 and, earlier. And so if you ask it a really specific niche question about like, hey, create this Instagram post for me here, or create this email post for me here, it can't really understand and put itself in the shoes of the brand. And so you end up getting these responses and you're like, screw this. Like I could have just done this myself. It would have been a lot more efficient. What we've been experimenting with though, is how can we create our own private knowledge graphs for each of these brands? Because there is a lot of available information about companies that we work with, for instance. So like, let's take Ruggable as an example. Ruggable's been around, I think, since like 2013.
Yep.
And Ruggable has, I looked in their mail charts, they've got 1,300 emails. They have 1,500 to 2,000 organic social posts with like pretty cheeky, funny brand voice. That's like 3,000 to 4,000 data points that we could put into a data framework that an LLM can pull into. So what we've been doing is creating these knowledge graphs, and they're like memories and brains that sit on top of an LLM. And when you query an LLM, it'll actually give you a response that's specific to those set of memories. And that's where we're being able to improve the efficiency of our brand marketing teams and performance marketing teams substantially, because like there's so many different data layers that you can crystallize, like that you can layer on top. So like, what does performance look like? Can I go in and quality score your outputs after I query it to make sure that it's only delivering me high quality score content? And I think this is like, for me, where I'm able to improve the efficiency of my team tenfold and deliver really good results for our clients, better than the results of like, a standard performance marketer who's coming on and they're not that good at copy either. The real issue we're trying to solve is like, you traditionally have a brand Bible, and you maybe see that once when you come on an account. The client doesn't even remember what it is. They just have an idea of like what their brand should look and feel and sound like. And then you have like 15 different teams trying to get that right across the different channels that you're operating across. And inherently by nature, that's not efficient and that's not consistent, which is what branding is supposed to be. So we've been figuring out ways to build models to do that.
Totally agree.
I recall I used to sit on the agency side and had, at any given time, 5-6 accounts, sometimes more, sometimes less. And I would get annoyed when I gave my copywriting team a task, and I'm the account manager, and I'm the only one who read like the brand Bibles when we were onboarding, so I know what it should sound like. And I would get frustrated with my copywriting team, be like, this is not in the voice of them, and have to redo a lot of that work. So everything you said, really smart. Definitely would let an account manager on an agency side like scale their work and take on more business with a lot less stress. So,
and a lot less stress. I mean, think about the human capital costs there too. So you need like a copywriting lead on the agency side. You need that too on the brand side. For a lot of brand focused founders that we work with, like, VYBES, we talked about, there's Stofa, and there's another one that comes to mind, Bandit. It's probably like this, but we don't work with them. That's the founder sitting there. And like, that's also incredibly expensive because you have all of these different resources that want output, and they're basically being stymied and hampered by an individual person. And so you're dampening output. This is a huge lurking cost for businesses. And when you don't have that person, it's an even bigger cost to the brand because you don't know the downside of all of these, subpar communications that are getting out there. So I think there's a huge cost advantage to being able to figure out this problem. That's why we focused on it. But the surprising thing is that these private data frameworks and knowledge graphs that we're building, these brand clones, they're performing of a surprisingly high fidelity, and they're just going to get better.
Yeah, and like last week our guest was Siki Chen, who founded Sandbox VR. His current company is Runway, and he was talking about how he uses Chat GPT-4 to replicate brand voices. And we'll drop this in the show notes because I think it's like somewhere mid podcast, but he goes in and he kind of gives us the cheat code or like the cheat sheet of like how he structures his prompts to get them to talk in the brand voice that they want. And he precludes it with like 3 paragraphs just talking about the voice. And so, obviously if you're using the entire data set, it doesn't do well on the brand voice, but if you tailor it and then give it some examples from and build the model on top of that, then you have something that you could work with. And he said he's seeing a tremendous amount of success with.
So I've tried to do that. Like it won't perform in the highest fidelity that you need it to, because it's like, and also not everyone can query it because you're just in one GPT. You're interfacing directly with Chat GPT. So you can't have multiple marketers querying that. Think about like if you were querying GPT with all the different prompts that he's talking about, but you had a separate knowledge base of like all of the data that was considered good brand marketing,
right?
Or good brand data points. So it already has thousands of data points of what is considered good for different channels, whether it's email or ads. And then what you do is you take that model and you stand it up in a server in the cloud. And it's a computer that's running, so anyone can interface with it.
Yeah. We're doing that at AdQuick, actually. I run the sales development team rolls up into me, and we have a long-term veteran, Mark. He's on my team. We're basically cloning Mark, right? We took all of his best, his banger emails, in an effort to replicate his friendliness, and talking about the various value propositions as they relate to a certain client type. and that's been working pretty well for us. And we've been testing this for a couple of weeks now.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of cloning yourself. I've done it with the I've the exact same data framework that I'm talking about, put in all of my emails, all my WhatsApps, all of my iMessages. So, I can, query directly on my phone through shortcuts, and it just answers all of my stuff for me.
Did you have to do the John Hamm thing of getting it to be subservient to you? Give it a few weeks alone.
It's me now. So no, that's been fun. I'm a big fan of that, though. Just productivity gains across the board. Right
on. What do we think, boys? Should we wrap it up here? We're past an hour and coming up on time.
Yeah. Let's let Lucas give a quick wrap of where people can find him and how we can give him a call if we want to work with him.
Yeah, guys, thanks so much. By the way, really enjoyed the talk. Really insightful discussion. If you want to find me, so that brand clone I was just talking about, you can access that at lucasdipietroantonio.com. It's all the way at the bottom. And then for me, Darkroom Lucas on Twitter, Lucas DiPietrantonio on LinkedIn. Those are really the two places that I speak. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, or thanks for joining us. And Adam, we almost forgot.
Like, comment, and subscribe to this video.
We're like 16 episodes in. We're getting better at being hosts.
Have to continually do that and annoy our listeners. Thanks so much, guys. We'll see you next week.